is up, fam? Welcome back to the channel. If you are new around these parts, hello. Thank you so freaking much for clicking. I'm Anna, and on this channel we budget, plan, and love us some sticky paper, friends. In today's video, I am back with another addition to my How to Budget series. I'm going to be showing you guys how to set up an emergency fund by setting up my emergency fund. I did set this up, I think maybe a year and a half ago, but my budget has changed a bit since then, and I really wanted to get an updated kind of fresh version to work towards, especially this year, since if you guys are friends to the channel, you know that I am really prioritizing saving and bulking up my own emergency fund. So when you're setting up an emergency fund, you really want to think about what is going to constitute as an emergency for you. Is it going to be car repairs, home repairs? Is it going to be the loss of a job, loss of income, maybe your partner's loss of income, any type of medical condition where you're unable to work? You really want to think about what's going to constitute as an emergency in my life so that you know what to plan for. I want to kind of have the focus of this fund be if for some reason I lost my job or had a reduction in income. That is my goal. That's what I'm basing my emergency savings off of. So I'm going to be including my most necessary monthly expenses. So I'm going to try as hard as possible not to include more of my wants, more of my discretionary spending, because I want to make sure that this is in place to cover, the most important things. But I also want to make sure that I build in enough of a buffer per se in case I need a little bit of extra money. So okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and zoom you guys in and we can get started. Okay, so we're gonna start with our different categories. Feel free to go ahead and grab a planner, a notebook, an Excel spreadsheet if that's what you use. Whatever you use to keep track of your monthly expenses, feel free to grab that. If you're wondering where to start, the best place is to create a monthly budget, right? And base your emergency fund off a lot of that information. And if you, are brand new to budgeting, have no idea how to create a monthly budget, I do have a video on the channel already that goes through how to create a monthly budget step by step. I'll be sure to link that in the description box for you and up in the cards above, so you guys can check that out if you want to, or if you need it. So let's go ahead and get started. So when we think about monthly expenses, we definitely want to think about housing first. So for you, that may be a mortgage or it could be rent. For me, it is a mortgage, and there's also an HOA attached to that because I live in a condo. So you want to figure out what this is for you. So if it's rent for you, do you also have to think about association fees? You want to start to think about that. So those two categories are going to cover my housing expenses. And then we want to think about utilities, right? So for me, I am responsible for my electricity bill and my natural gas bill, right? And then I'm going to also include cable. Well, I'm going to include internet actually, because we don't really have cable. Now, those of you who are friends to the channel know that my internet bill is usually not covered by me. It's covered by my partner, so it's not typically in most of my budgets. But because this is an emergency fund and I wanted to account for potential loss of job or income, I want to make sure I include anything that is of the household, basically. So you may want to do the same depending on how you handle your finances. If you're married, or if you're with a partner, you want to discuss with them how you want to handle this setup. But I think it's best if you're doing an emergency fund to handle it for the household, in case, listen, when it rains, it pours, y'all. And sometimes, unfortunately, I know I have been in this position before, and maybe some of you have as well, in the position where I lost my job and my partner did too around the same time. So I just want to make sure that we are covered regardless of that. So might be something you want to do too. Okay, so we have internet, natural gas. I have my cell phone bill. And then I do also have, we have, I should say, a car loan. It's actually my partner's, but again, thinking of the household will need transportation of some kind. So if there's any reduction in income, it's kind of covered in here too. So I want to put in car loan and car insurance as well. So that should cover utilities. Let's get into some of our other bills and just kind of more daily, day-to-day expenses. So that would be, we definitely have groceries. We'll have gasoline. I am going to keep my beauty cash envelope category. So typically, for those of you who are brand new to the channel, I have 5 cash envelopes that I kind of use for my day-to-day spending. And that's groceries, gas, beauty, eating out, and spending. I'm going to keep all of those in there. And obviously I can adjust the amounts accordingly to whatever our situation is at the time. But I do want to keep all of those in there. And then I'm also going to include one last category for a buffer for any other miscellaneous type things that may come up that we may need to handle. You can, I recommend you include it in yours as well, because it's always good to have more rather than have less, right? If you don't need it, great, but at least if you need it, it is there. And like I said, y'all, when it rains, it tends to pour. So I just want to make sure all the bases are covered. So some things that are not on here that might apply to you might be daycare, school tuition, anything related to kids' activities. That might be something that you want to consider adding into this. Any debts that you have. So obviously I have a car loan here. That is not something that you would typically see in my budget, just so y'all know. But again, trying to cover all my bases if we were to ever need this emergency fund to make sure that we are covered, kind of regardless of who's responsible for what, right? Make sure the household is covered. So those are the types of things you want to think about. Any other day-to-day spending that you have. Usually what I like to say, again, is go based off your typical monthly budget. And if you don't have a monthly budget to base this off of, you can always use your bank statement. So go through the last few months of your bank statements and you'll see where your money is going. And that'll be a good indicator of what you should include in this fund. Okay, so now that we have the categories all listed out, let's get into the amounts. So what I'm going to do for amounts is pretty much kind of round up. Again, because this is a fund, I just want to kind of round out everything, make sure I give myself little bits of cushion here and there, especially if this is for a time where there won't be any income coming in. I think future me, if I ever need it, will thank me. So I'm going to average out $1,370 for mortgage, and then $325 for HOA. Now, electric and gas are both bills that vary depending on usage, right? So what I'm going to do is kind of average out what I would typically get, and I'll overestimate a little. I do like to overestimate when it comes to these things to make sure, again, that I give myself a bit of a cushion. So for electricity, I'm going to overestimate with $100. Now, most months it doesn't reach that. The only time that my electric bill has ever been over 100 is during the summer months when we're like cranking that AC because we sweating basically. So otherwise it pretty much stays under 100. But again, as I start to build, 3 months worth of expenses, 6 months worth of expenses, that average should cover me for those months where, I use a little bit more. It should cover me because most months I'll be using less than this amount, if that makes sense. So, okay, so I'm going to average out 100 for that. I'm going to average out 120 for gas. This one definitely tends to be used a little bit more heavily, well, a lot more heavily actually, during the winter months. So I do want to put a little bit more of a buffer on that one. And then for internet, I'm going to go ahead and average out $100. That's not what we normally pay, but y'all, I just don't trust our internet provider, and I know that they will go and raise my price, and I just want to be prepared for their shenanigans, honestly. My cell phone bill hasn't really changed much in years, so I'm going to average out $70 for that one. For car loan, I'm going to average it out to $300. Car insurance is usually a 6-month premium, so I'm going to average that out to about $70 a month. And then we get into our day-to-day expenses. So again, for these, go based off your monthly budget, but if you don't have that, probably a good idea to look through your statements for the past few months to see, you know, where you kind of land as far as the average goes on what you spend in each of these. So for us in groceries, I'm going to average out $4.50 a month. Gas, I'm going to average out $80 a month. Beauty is so hard, y'all, but I'm going to average out $100 a month. And some of you guys may think this is more of a luxury envelope. It's not for me. I definitely can use it to do my nails, as y'all can see, even though they need to be done, but we're going to ignore that. But mostly I want to make sure that this covers my hair. My nails is more of a luxury that I can leave out. So that's what I'm going to average out for that. Eating out, again, more of a luxury, but I'm going to go ahead and include it in. And then spending, another more of a luxury, but I'm going to include it because it could also cover kind of some miscellaneous things we might need for the house or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And then for a buffer, y'all, you can really decide whatever you want to do. A buffer is really there to give you a cushion. And I've talked about that a lot already in the video. Give you a cushion if something comes up. And this might be, you know, again, if you are using your emergency fund for the purposes of, you know, an emergency car repair, an emergency home repair, something like that, you know, you want to include those costs in here, an average of whatever you decide, depending on what you'd like it to cover, at least help you cover. So it's up to you how much you want to allocate here. So I am not going to be including those in this fund. I hope to, you know, knock on wood, not need it too soon, because I'd like to have a separate savings for those types of emergencies. This fund I really want to be for, you know, a loss in employment or a reduction in income. So yeah. So for buffer for me, I'm going to do $300. No rhyme or reason. I just feel like that's a decent buffer for something that might come up. Obviously, it's not going to cover anything too huge, but it definitely can help me out if something does come up. So that's what I'm going to average out for my buffer. Again, totally personal type of decision, what you want to put in for your buffer. My situation is different than yours in many cases. Actually, probably in all cases. I don't have a family. It's kind of just me and my partner. So, you know, if you are budgeting for a family, if you have children, that buffer may be very different for you and what you might need. So, you know, plan accordingly, budget accordingly. Okay, now that we've laid out all of the categories and amounts, I'm going to go ahead and put in the total strip that I left out here on the bottom, and I'm just going to leave a blank space because, you guys, I'm notorious for forgetting something. So in case I do, I have a little blank space there that I can add whatever I'd like there. Okay, now what we're going to do is calculate the total for the month, and then we're going to calculate it for 3 months, and so on and so forth. So let's start with the monthly expenses. So I'm going to go ahead and add up all these numbers. Okay, so grand total for monthly expenses for just 1 month, we're talking, is $3,505. Now we're going to calculate each one for 3 months. So what I'm going to do is kind of do this out off camera, and then I'll come back and kind of go over some of the numbers with you guys, just so that you guys aren't watching me kind of do the math all the way through. But basically what you would do if you're doing this right now and you want to follow along is just take your monthly amount for each category and multiply it by 3 for 3 months, multiply it by 6 for 6 months, and then multiply it by 12 for 1 year. So, all right, y'all, let's see where we're at. I'm nervous already. Pray for your girl. All right, you guys, I went ahead and totaled up everything, and the sticker shock is real. Leave me a comment down below if the sticker shock is real for y'all, because it's real for me. But here is what it looks like. So you guys already know the total monthly. So for 3 months, I would need $10,515 worth of an emergency fund to cover my bills and expenses. For 6 months, I would need $21,030 to cover my expenses. And then for 1 year, 12 months, I would need $42,060 to cover my bills and expenses, y'all. All right, and these are just the basics, like the basics of the basics. No extra frills, no really extra anything. I feel like for the most part, this is like about as bare bones as you can get. But that is about what I would need to kind of make it through for each period of time. So I know that when I see the 1 year one, I'm like, all right, it's going to take me a while to get my emergency fund all the way up there. But I am proud to say that right now where my emergency fund stands, we do have at least 3 months worth of living expenses saved up, which is really exciting. So what I'm working towards right now is 6 months, and the year is a bit of a more long-term goal because it's so much that I would need to save. But it's also kind of nice to break it up like this so that you have kind of more short-term goals to work on when you're building an emergency fund, and you don't have to, start out the gate saving up for a year. Start with saving up to 3 months, and then, move on to up to 6 months and kind of build it gradually that way. Because as you can see, it's a hefty amount of money. And I'm sure none of us just have, 42K sitting around chilling, just waiting, even though we'd like to. So anyways, you guys, those are what my numbers look like. That's what I would need to cover my expenses for each of the time frames that you see here. Let me know down below in the comments if you guys already have an emergency fund set up, or if you did it just now. Was the sticker shock real, either now or whenever you did it? Because every time I do it, y'all, I'm always like, good Lord. I need like 3 jobs though. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful and informative for you guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, as it really does help support the channel. Thank you so freaking much for watching, y'all, and I will see you real soon. Bye.